Aa çok kısa olmuş. Kısıyorsun. Aç. Tamam.
I guess I should chill the fuck out.
Hey.
What up?
Yay!
Now what? What happens?
Welcome to the
Hello, friend.
How did you sit? You just sit? Nope.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, just let me know.
Do I need like VR nodules to write my hands?
I think the only person on the island that we're missing is Pizza Place.
That's okay.
Bu nasıl gidiyor ya?
It's okay.
Drones, are you?
Bitcoin CEO.
Is there a sit function?
Lots of people.
What's going on, you guys?
Yeah, what's up, everyone?
No, you can't sit. You have to kind of
Welcome,
walk into the
welcome.
chair, and then you sort of become one with the chair.
Welcome all you newbies. Don't forget you can change your avatar.
When did Charlie Lee sell all his Litecoin?
Your legs.
Hope you guys come again. There's more than one event.
Stand in the chair function.
Yes.
I just fucking around. Oh, okay, dude. I saw that before, so I don't have any problem with that.
Same general vibe. Wow, this is crazy. Also, everybody, you guys can go to the top of the roof. That's actually a really cool place if you want to check out that.
Hey, can you hear me?
If anybody wants to get a rooftop party going.
Yesterday, actually. It's a bit of a honest with you.
That's pretty cool. I wish you could customize more. Thanks.
You can customize avatars a lot more in VR chat or other apps.
Much better.
But
Yeah, pretty much all of the symptoms of like the nerve issue are pretty much gone, and I just got basic surgery to recover from now, which this is going to take about like in total. So I just got to take it easy until then. Yeah. So I try to. Yeah.
Kuulettiin, niin mä hoidan nyt tätä hommaa nyt sille, että mä hoidan. Kun mä en tiedä itsekään esitys, niin pitää nyt kattoo. Nyt täytyy ihan rauhallisesti olla ja odottaa.
Oh, just now. So it seems like some people are trying to get in different rooms. So I think we're trying to work that out so everybody can get in an orderly fashion.
I gotta find my couch. Okay. Nope.
the digital flesh.
And
Silent
What up,
despair.
Brian?
You can do it by yourself.
What a great turnout.
Yes, indeed. More people are still pouring in, it seems.
And this is just the first room of 80.
Salut Cryptography.
Well, I guess we can do some things while we're waiting to get set up. I guess show of hands. Who's first? For who is this the first halving? I don't know how to ask that question. Is this your first halving? Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
That's the great thing about a VR. You can wiggle your arms and move around. Show of hands. Who's this first halving? Got some people raising their hands. Nice. Nice. That's a great question. I don't know. You can do it in real life, maybe, and then. All right, so a good amount of first halvings. Yeah, I see it somehow. How many people have seen all 3 Bitcoin halvings? This is their 3rd halving. Who are the super OGs? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somebody's got a thumbs up. Is that a yes? Thumbs up. Nice. I'm a 2 halving person myself. Who doesn't know? Oh. Ah, there you go. Now can everybody hear me?
This is my 5th halving.
Or you're counting some other
2 Litecoin ones, so
right.
Yeah.
Maybe let's try again. Who, since everybody can hear me now, who's been to all 3 halvings? This is their 3rd Bitcoin halving that they've seen. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a good crowd. Charlie's leading the way with 5.
Yeah. Yeah, you point at them and trigger, and then their name pops up. Whoa! Why is there a portal?
Somebody has a portal.
What's going
What
on
is
here?
that? Yeah, what's going on with that?
I've never seen that before.
Should we join the portal?
I've seen the VR chat portal, but not the Altspace.
I feel like I don't know where I would end up with that.
It's like, dude, is this it?
Can we go on
all right.
air?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple panelists. Like maybe we can start it and then kind of everybody can ease into it.
Hey, Jesse.
Oh, hey. Sorry, I was like stuck in my settings.
Oh, there's Eric. Eric.
Hey. Is your first time in VR?
No. I got the orientation the other day. So like second time in Altspace VR, but I've done some other
Wow,
VR
you
stuff.
guys are all standing. We're just missing one
That's pretty cool.
panelist.
But you don't have a headset, right?
Where's Jameson?
I do have a headset.
I think he's still trying to get in. Do you guys want to kind of kick it off and then we can
All right.
can
I
plug them in later?
You had surgery, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see.
So I'm just on a PC right now.
What are you guys thinking?
What about you?
Yeah, I have the
Hey.
Is it much better in the headset?
Yeah, it's much better with a headset.
I've got Eric, Charlie, and Elise.
Elise, can you go on air?
Try it for a little bit.
Eric, can you go on air?
I think I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you. I hear myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I should probably put some headphones in.
Yep.
Oh, you're here, James.
Yeah, there he
Are
is.
you going to speak today as well?
So Jameson, if you just want to stand in front of your real self over there.
Ricky Galley, you have an echo, by the way. Just telling you. Yeah. He has an echo.
Jameson, I put you on air.
Alrighty.
What?
At last.
You're sticking with the robot.
You guys should also amplify your voice.
Might as well. I have to differentiate myself. I'm a special snowflake.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Jameson, you should amplify your voice.
I think you still have some microphone issues. So
Hear me.
Loud and clear.
Some microphone issues. Can you guys hear me okay? This is Jesse.
Oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Ready.
Cool. So I'll do a quick intro, and I think we'll start.
Udi, you need to amplify your voice.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Oké, ziezo, gemute. Dan moet je opdrukken.
Okay, we're ready to begin. Had some technical difficulty first, but we're ready. So welcome everyone to the Block Drop VR Halving Party by Kraken. Thank you so much for joining us. You'll notice that you're all muted now, but we're really happy to have you here. I'm having a hard time keeping track of the number of people here. We're over 200 already here, so that's really cool. You might see that there aren't that many people next to you. That's because this event is kind of split into multiple instances of the same room, and you can only see the people in your instance and also us on stage. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. We really wanted to do this special big celebration for the Bitcoin halving, and we think this is really coming out great. I'm Udi Wertheimer. You might have seen me on Twitter. I'm also hosting Reckless VR, which is a weekly meetup group in VR about Bitcoin. We do this every week. And if this seems cool to you, then you should know that you can join us for the weekly meetups each and every week just about Bitcoin. You can find Reckless VR on Twitter and on Telegram and on recklessvr.com and get invites to our weekly VR meetups. They're really cool and really fun. So this is going to be a 5-hour celebration of Bitcoin. If your device is running on battery, then be sure that to have your kind of charger already with you, because it won't hold for 5 hours. So be ready for that. We'll have short breaks between sessions, so you'll be able to kind of freshen up and also hang out with other people. We'll unmute you during the break, so you'll be able to have fun.
community events, which of course this event series has been. So just wanted to give a quick word before we start about why we thought this was such an important event to do. It's been a challenging year. I think with something big like the Bitcoin halving, it's unfortunate we can't be physically together. So we thought, why not bring everybody digitally together? So great to see you all here. So the scope of this panel, we really wanted to get some great Bitcoin experts together, share our first principles, but also might disagree a little bit about the future of Bitcoin and where it's headed. So, the idea of this panel is really just thinking ahead. What does the future for Bitcoin look like in 4 years? Why do we feel that way? And I thought it'd be something fun where we can look back in 4 years and see who had the best predictions, who had the wildest ideas. And so to kick it off, I guess I'll start with the first question. Imagining this future, it's 2024. How and why are people buying their first Bitcoin? Jameson, why don't you start us off?
Well, obviously it's because of hyperinflation in many different currencies that people simply didn't expect to ever happen. But we've got a lot of things. Is that a serious thing? I think that inflation will continue to become a serious thing. In order for that to kick off more adoption, we still have a lot that we need to do to make Bitcoin more usable, make people feel more comfortable that they can actually hold their own coins, manage their money, and not have to worry about catastrophic losses. But I do believe that this narrative is going to become more and more important as we have already seen the money printers spool up. The real question is, how much does it hurt people? Like, when do they really start to feel the pain enough that they start to investigate alternatives?
Eric, a little bit of a modification on that. Are people still converting fiat money into Bitcoin, or are they using something like a wrapped Bitcoin? Are they doing something else? How are people getting their first Bitcoin in 2024?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that probably people will still be buying their first Bitcoin using consumer-facing apps such as Square and probably centralized exchanges still. In other countries such as Argentina and Venezuela, where there might be a stronger push towards preventing people from exiting their fiat systems, they might have to use sort of decentralized solutions, local solutions as they're using today. I think that those types of solutions are likely to just continue to grow and become more accessible as time goes on. So yeah, I don't see that people's first entry into Bitcoin will be through a synthetic derivative on Ethereum. I think that's perhaps too far-fetched at this moment, but you never know, I guess.
And Charlie, are people still using centralized services? 2024, we're still going to be using the same things we have today?
I think people will still be using centralized exchange for a really long time. I think centralized services are efficient, and unfortunately, you have to trust them, but I think for a long time, people will still be using centralized services.
Elise, I guess maybe a different question, variation here. So what types of commerce are happening? Are people still buying their first Bitcoin through these exchanges? What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Pete. It's great to be here with everyone this morning. I actually wanted to address your first question, the question you directed at Jameson first, because I think that'll be one of the most important changes we see in 2024. So today, people are getting first access to Bitcoin through purchase, and most of the folks entering the ecosystem are investors. They're expecting the price to appreciate, and that's why they're coming in to be Bitcoin hodlers. But by 2024, I think we'll see a greater diversification of the reasons, the motivations, and the methods that people use to get into Bitcoin. So whereas today it's purchase, I think that by 2024, we'll see purchase, mining, and earning being the primary ways that people enter Bitcoin. And that's quite important because earning will be a method that larger populations, for instance, those in emerging markets or populations of lower socioeconomic status, use to get access to this ecosystem. And so that's actually one of the primary things that excites me about the next 4 years. And then finally, in terms of the way that people first access generally Bitcoin, today you have to buy Bitcoin to spend Bitcoin, but we've seen products emerge this year that allow you to spend Bitcoin without having purchased and held. So what I'm referring to here is products like Zap's new, I'm forgetting the name of it. Strike, yes. Zap's new Strike product that allows you to spend without going through a hold period. And all of these things together produce two profound changes. One, the demographics of who holds Bitcoin and who's a Bitcoiner. And two, the types of uses and utility we can get out of Bitcoin.
Interesting. I guess jumping off of that, another thing to think about is the competition in the space. Of course, Bitcoin is not the only option. It's 2024. Have governments launched their own cryptocurrencies? Are they competing with Bitcoin, or is it still these two worlds, the cryptocurrency world and the fiat currency world, are still separate? Maybe let's start with Elise again on this one.
Wow. Okay, that's a great question. So just to repeat, so I make sure that I address your core point, you're wondering if Bitcoin is competing against government-backed digital fiat, basically?
Yeah, I think we're hearing a lot recently about governments experimenting with digital currencies, digital monies. Of course, Facebook kind of came out with their Libra initiative, not a government, but similar. I guess maybe the better question is, it's 2024. What is Bitcoin competing against in terms of other cryptocurrency-like technology?
Bitcoin is, in 2024, Bitcoin is competing against the same thing it competes against today, which is just apathy and obvious use case. So we want to make sure that by 2024, it's not just those of us in a VR room that find Bitcoin to be useful, right? And we want Bitcoin to be useful for things other than investment. And so the challenges in adoption and broad population adoption will be very much the same. And that will be, can we find greater utility of Bitcoin? Can we find utilities that are applicable to a really broad population versus just those at the core that care about things like Jameson mentioned at the start, inflation and government spending and controls. And of course, that's incredibly important. But beyond that, and our first principles, things like making sure that the technology remains decentralized and opt-in accessible, that will assure that we can get additional use cases besides just the investment use case. So for instance, I talked before about earning as a way to access Bitcoin. Our decentralized technology, including higher level infrastructure like Lightning Network, makes it efficient for people to earn Bitcoin in very common jobs in emerging markets. So Pete, do you mind if I mention an example of a company here?
Yeah, sure.
So are folks in the room familiar with a company called Stackwork? So Stackwork is a company that's using Lightning Network to create a distributed workforce that competes with Mechanical Turk. So what Stackwork does is it develops a workforce in emerging markets like the Philippines, and then uses Lightning Network to pay people in real time micropayments for work like photo tagging for machine learning companies. And then Stackwork does not just that, but has also created a circular economy for that workforce so that people can use those Lightning Network payments to pay for inexpensive phones and for their minutes. And so Stackwork is addressing our real challenge, I think, of competition, which is competing against just the basic utilities of common life that an average person needs.
I guess turning over.
So I worry about that a little bit more than competing with government digital fiats.
I guess my point, or I guess maybe something to think about is, it'd be possible to maybe build something like that, a similar service with a crypto fiat currency type hybrid. I guess, Charlie, what do you think about that? Is that something we'll see?
Well, I guess first of all, like all the fiat currencies today are mostly digital anyways, right? So people are talking about like countries launching their own cryptocurrency, but it doesn't really matter, right? Countries still want control, so it might be a cryptocurrency technically, but they can still like stop anyone's transactions or print more money out of thin air. So it doesn't really compete with Bitcoin, right? It effectively compete against Tether, but it's not the same thing, right? So I don't see any government-backed cryptocurrency competing against Bitcoin in the space where the reason why Bitcoin exists is because it's not controlled by a government. It can't be printed out of thin air, and it can't be censored. And those two properties are what makes Bitcoin valuable.
I guess, Eric, do you worry about the utility of those kind of systems, though? You know, what if we are able to, what if there is government-type fiat cryptocurrency that, you know, just is really useful for a lot of people? In 2024, I guess, how do you think that might look?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about in this discussion is what the head of the Chinese Central Bank Digital Currency Initiative said regarding the Chinese DCEP. He said that one of the reasons that they're launching the Chinese digital blockchain-based yen is to curb enthusiasm in blockchain-based assets such as cryptocurrencies. One of the reasons that they're doing this is because they're seeing that, you know, the people in the retail market are starting to question whether or not the central bank fiat money is the best that we can achieve. So it's very interesting to see that cryptocurrencies are pushing central bank money issuers to innovate and develop better currencies. And I think that we are actually going to see the same way as the central bank saw it as their role to provide people with cash, like cash that is actually anonymous. I think that we might actually see central bank issued alternatives that do provide some level of anonymity. I think that they're going to do everything that they can in order to make the money that they can print, being able to print their money is the thing that is most important to them. And whether or not that money, if that has to be private, if that has to be more censorship resistant and free, I think that they will cling on to that power as long as they can. So I think that there will be fierce competition. It depends on how does the education propagate in society. Do people understand that if you want something that is inflation hedged, you have to go for another option? I think that that's going to be a major challenge to get people to understand. But I think that we have the upper hand here. I think that people are waking up and realizing that having a digital asset that is both a store of value and a medium of exchange is superior to what the central banks can offer.
Jameson, I guess, how do you see that? Is education really the key there? How do you see that competition?
I would be incredibly surprised, or pleasantly surprised, if central bank digital currencies added stronger privacy. If they did, I would expect it to be privacy from other people on the network, but not from the central bank itself. But really, I think what this fundamentally comes down to is, what is cryptography good for? And it's actually a double-edged sword, because cryptography can be good for privacy via encryption. The flip side is that cryptography can strip away privacy if you're using it as an identification mechanism, you know, by essentially public keys that you're cryptographically adding signatures to different things to verify what belongs to you. And, you know, Bitcoin doesn't really do much of the first. It really does more of the latter. I expect that central bank digital currencies would actually be a point of control to make it easier for the existing banks and governments to track all of the activity happening. You know, from the perspective of fighting crime and fraud and other illegal things, governments hate cash. So they would love to get rid of cash because of its privacy properties. And I'm sure they would much prefer to have some sort of cryptographically secure blockchain that also has easy tracing and identity management built into it. So from that perspective, that is one of the reasons why I think that it is important that Bitcoin continues to push the boundaries of what we can do with privacy. And I am excited about a number of the features that we're going to continue to see come out in Bitcoin that will help people improve their privacy.
Yeah, I want to stay on that note of competition. You know, as we look back at the 2010s as a decade, I think you can think of them as a period of great experimentation with taking the Bitcoin design and seeing what else could be done with it. I think, a few main areas that we saw were this idea of smart contracts, right? This idea that you could run programs on a blockchain. We saw this idea of governance, that we needed to change how decisions are made within a blockchain type system. I guess going over to Elise, do you expect new innovations, or is the altcoin type experiment over that we saw over the last decade?
So I think what I expect to see is that as the Bitcoin protocol advances and allows some of what's coming down the pipeline for Bitcoin allows us to offer the same sort of value and opportunity that we saw first develop on other chains. So for instance, I expect to see more sophisticated contracting opportunities be present by 2024, and probably much sooner than that. And so in that opportunity, I'd expect to see that companies building on top of projects like Ethereum would move over to Bitcoin, a more stable and secure blockchain that would, by that point, allow more sophisticated contracting language. And then even beyond that, in addition to what is offered through advancements at the core protocol level that create greater opportunities for sophisticated contracting, we see opportunities also in side chains like Liquid Network to compete very directly with other blockchain protocols that had emerged that had not been based on the first principles of Bitcoin. And so what's important for me as a VC is to see companies building on a stable, secure, and predictable infrastructure, so that the work you're building today it doesn't need to be deeply refactored because of an infrastructure change. And so I think that you actually will see more venture activity in the Bitcoin space and in the blockchain space generally, once there's a merger between the incredible functionality that some of the other protocols have had and Bitcoin's core stability. Does that answer your question, Pete?
Definitely. Definitely. So, Charlie, I guess moving over to you, I think in many ways you might have kicked off this great altcoin type experimentation period. Is that coming to a close? Do you think that will continue to have value in the next decade?
I think it's going to continue. I think Bitcoin is going to slowly become kind of adopt some of the things that the altcoins are experimenting with and become better and better. But there's always going to be more experimentation. Obviously, there's going to be more shitcoins and coins ICOs and stuff like that, where people are just trying different things. But I think it's going to continue. There's no way it's going to just disappear and Bitcoin will be the only coin available out there, right?
Eric, do you think the same? Are we going to see a lot of cryptos go to zero? Or are we going to see that they continue to stick around? What's your view on is this going to be another multi-coin 4 years where there are many cryptocurrencies competing?
Well, I think that the main problem right now is that it's very difficult to get all the properties you want from a cryptocurrency within the same protocol. But that's a technological challenge that we have right now. Like if you look at, for example, privacy in Bitcoin, it's as an advanced user myself, I spend a lot of time mixing my coins and trying to use the tools that are available. But there's going to be a point in time when there are privacy solutions. Maybe they are based on second layer Bitcoin solutions. Maybe they appear somewhere else. But there's going to come a point in time where chain analysts are going to say, this method of transferring coins does not allow us for a useful way to distinguish who is the sender and who is the receiver and what the amounts are. When we come to that point, it's the incentives to create a new privacy coin are going to be a lot lower. I expect that by 2024, we'll have reasonably good ways to transfer cryptocurrencies anonymously in a scalable manner. And at that point, we won't see 10 or 15 new privacy coins launching trying to achieve the same goal, because we'll have something that is achieving that to a relatively reasonable degree, in the same way that we don't shift over between various encryption algorithms. We'll have something that works relatively well, and I think we'll see a lot more concentration around those use cases that do work. Of course, we'll see new developments. We're always going to see, someone coming up with a new protocol and says, this is what we should shift to. But the reason that we have so much fragmentation today is because, well, the Bitcoin, for instance, does not deliver especially like super well, for example, in the privacy category. It works, but it's clunky, so that still creates an incentive for people to come up with alternative solutions. But I think that's going to decrease over time.
Let me add a bit to that. Can I add a bit to that? So a lot of people say that Bitcoin, there's no need for other altcoins because Bitcoin can do everything. But in respect to privacy, like Bitcoin is conservative, right? It can't just all of a sudden add a new privacy technology. So things like Zcash, Monero, and Mimblewimble or Grin and Beam are testing like 3 totally different like privacy solutions that have different trade-offs, right? So we don't know which one is better, and there might be another one out there that is better than all 3 of them, right? And Bitcoin's doing privacy on the second layer right now, but some people believe you need privacy on the base layer for it to be truly private. So which is better? Is Grin better than Monero, or is Zcash the best privacy available out there? And that's something that the market will decide, right? The market will kind of figure out what's actually the best privacy on the base layer. And potentially Bitcoin will adopt it, or potentially it won't. I guess in time we'll tell. We'll see. But this is something that the market will figure out.
Like you said, there's trade-offs. Generally, you are going to be trading off security whenever you're adding complexity. And we've seen a lot of security incidents on some of the protocols that have more complex features built into them. It's just harder to reason your way through all of the edge cases there. There's also trade-offs with some of the privacy applications that then make it difficult, if not impossible, to fully audit the monetary supply. So these are other like fundamental principles that we start running up against, which create contention. And where is it all going to go? Nobody, I think, can say for sure, but just due to the nature of the space, no one can stop anyone from experimenting. The real question, I think, for people who launch their own standalone altcoin that's essentially its own money is, will that singular feature be enough to pull away Bitcoin's network effect? Or if it does become popular and sound enough that it starts to do that, would Bitcoin then try to adopt that technology for itself? These are the real questions that I think no one can answer, but it's great to have as many people experimenting as possible.
Yeah, speaking of that experimentation, I think we're coming out of a period in which, few protocol changes have been made to Bitcoin. Probably over the last 4 years, SegWit was the biggest. I guess sticking with Jameson, do you expect the next 4 years to be more or less conservative in terms of these changes that are actually integrated into Bitcoin?
The trajectory definitely seems to be going in the more conservative direction. In fact, when I talk to core protocol developers and have them reflect back on SegWit and the process through which that was vetted and rolled out, many of them will actually laugh and roll their eyes because compared to the processes that we have in place today, it was fairly haphazard. And I guess we're kind of lucky that nothing went completely awry with that. But we do believe, in the next year or so, we should see Schnorr, aggregated signatures, Taproot come out. And that has been a multi-year process of people working on. So it does seem like, especially for these more complicated changes, the time frames are extending further and further because of the amount of diligence that is going into them.
And do you think that's all going to be through soft forks as we've seen, or do you think hard fork methodology is still something people are discussing?
If I recall correctly, I don't think that Bitcoin is going to have to do a hard fork for many decades. There may be some number overflow issue or something in there, but one of the problems I think that we continue to see as the protocol ossifies, as the network grows, is that the mere thought or idea of trying to coordinate a hard fork across a growing diversity, number of people and entities that are operating with the network, it just becomes more and more difficult to even envision how that would happen unless it itself was a multi-year process.
Well, I guess, Eric, as you look out at 2024, have there been big changes to the Bitcoin protocol?
I think that Bitcoin is doing exactly right by being conservative at the base layer and maintaining that the integrity of the protocol remains sound. And I have been for a very long time, and I'm still a bit nostalgic when it comes to talking about sidechains. I haven't really personally left the idea that experimentations should happen on sidechains and in second layers. And I'm going to say something kind of controversial here, and I really want people to understand what it is that I'm saying when I'm saying this. And I think that if we're looking at the sidechain ecosystem right now, Ethereum is the best Bitcoin sidechain. And I know, and it doesn't have to be Ethereum. It can be any other type of expressive altcoin. And I'm not saying that the token in those altcoins are going to become new forms of money or anything. I'm just saying that within these networks, such as Ethereum and other expressive layers, that's where we're seeing the major sidechain developments. And there are ways that you can crypto-economically peg Bitcoins to move into those networks. And if you want to innovate on top of Bitcoin in these weird expressive ways, as we're seeing in Ethereum with DeFi, we're just going to get our Bitcoin token crypto-economically pegged into those chains, and we'll do experimentation there. So I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation on top of Bitcoin, and it's going to be within sidechains, and that could be other mainnets. And I'm not sure those tokens on those mainnets are going to stay relevant forever. But I at least see a tremendous amount of innovation happening with Bitcoin because of those other chains.
Yeah, Charlie, I guess you were pretty big in terms of just getting SegWit as a technology pushed through. I guess, how do you look back at that experience over the next 4 years? Do you expect to see anything like that?
Well, coincidentally, today is actually the 3rd-year anniversary of Litecoin activating SegWit.
Huzzah!
SegWit in 2017, May 10th. So it's been,
so you're ready
it's been
to do
3
it
years,
again, right?
which is for sure. I think Bitcoin will become more and more conservative on the base layer, and that's a good thing, right? Because now we're talking about 100 billion plus currency, and soon enough it will become $1 trillion currency, and you just can't risk so much by experimenting on the Bitcoin base layer. And I think that's a good thing. It's going to ossify, and more stuff will be done on the second layer and on side chains. And I agree. I think that's where we'll see more stuff being done, and that's not a bad thing.
Elise, I guess, do you have any thoughts on this protocol ossification? Is that going to be the buzzword of the next 4 years?
Sure. I think I agree with what Charlie just said. I think that it's positive for the Bitcoin core protocol to be hardened and for changes to be, not simple to push through. But yet I'm still expecting to see the changes that have been referenced on this panel prior. So things like Taproot, Schnorr, the adoption of mini-scripts, and I'm excited for the opportunities that opens up for entrepreneurs building on the application layer.
Interesting. So I guess thinking again, it's 2024. What are the big risks that you guys still think will be valid for Bitcoin at that time as you look at the landscape? Will there still be risks facing Bitcoin adoption? Elise, I guess let's stick with you.
Risk for Bitcoin adoption in 2024?
Do you still think we'll be dealing with the same risks that we have today?
I hope not. So what I'm seeing on the entrepreneurial side is that founders are beginning to pay more attention to the things that drive adoption. So if you look at companies like Kaza, for instance, the company that Jameson co-founded, we see strong UI, UX, and design elements that are directly related to the value proposition, right? So Causa's security is stronger because their design is so strong and intuitive. But not just that, not just is their security stronger, but the user base that they can serve is much broader. And that's because the technology has been put into the background, and at the foreground is just a intuitive and simple user experience. So I'm seeing a lot of that from founders, and that's quite new. I'm also seeing founders that are looking at ways to use sidechain technology and to use Lightning Network to serve broader populations, or even to serve institutions in a way that simply wasn't possible before, for instance, sidechain technology was mature to the point it is today. And so I think that the risk of adoption will be less in 2024 than it is today. And it's less today than it was at the last Halving.
Interesting. Charlie, I guess as you look out at the risks, what kind of risks will there be? More macroeconomic risks, if they're not technical risks? I guess what kind of risks do you see being most applicable to Bitcoin at that time?
Risk in terms of Bitcoin failing?
Just in terms of Bitcoin's adoption in general, right? I guess what do you we're always dealing with risks and ways to mitigate risks. What do you think will be the most valid, or the ones that we'll be struggling with at that moment?
Well, stepping back, I actually think Bitcoin is kind of inevitable. It's going to eventually replace fiat currency as the best form of money that people will be using. In terms of in 4 years, I think it'll be kind of a similar problem where kind of the user experience is an issue, right? It's still hard for people to kind of get their first Bitcoin and actually secure it, right? It's kind of a new concept. It's something that people have never been used to, right? They put their fiat money in a bank account, and then it's insured for them, and they have the money always there whenever they need it until it's not. But for Bitcoin, they have to secure it themselves, right? Or they trust a central exchange which can get hacked. So this is something that, speaking back to the company Jameson is working for, Casa is really helping people secure their own coins. And more and more companies like that will come up and to help people be able to secure their coins. I think this is one of the major issues that we kind of have to figure out.
Eric, I guess do you still think it's usability that's the big risk for Bitcoin in 2024? It's still going to be, how do we use private keys? How do people have their sovereignty and still be able to use the technology?
I actually have another fear for Bitcoin, and it's very much related to the specific jurisdiction that I live in. And I think that the main problem that, as a Swede, that I have with Bitcoin are actually the tax laws. What's making it almost impossible for me to use Bitcoin is that every purchase and every usage of Bitcoin results in a very tedious tax documentation activity for me. So, and it's also, in Sweden, we have this very strange capital gains system where if I hold Bitcoin directly and I make a profit, then I have to pay 30% tax on that. But if I hold Bitcoin in a government type of account, that's called an ISK account in Sweden, I don't have to pay the capital gains tax at all. But then I'm not actually holding real Bitcoins. Then I'm holding a ETN, an exchange traded note. So it means that I'm forced into custodial use in order to have an exposure to Bitcoin that isn't crippled by tax regulations. But the result of that, it's perverse incentives, and the result of that is that I love non-custodial and censorship resistance, as much as the next guy. But the reality of the situation is that I haven't bought real Bitcoin since 2018 because of the tax regulations, and that could be a way for that. I mean, that's an attack vector. It's a huge attack vector. And in Sweden, I think that these types of ETN contracts are becoming the main point of entry into Bitcoin exposure for users. And I really don't know how to solve that problem, because people don't want to. I mean, they like not having to pay capital gains tax. So the choice becomes very simple, and that's very scary to me.
That's actually funny because I bought into a Swedish ETN for a little while and then almost lost everything due to the SEC, but I wrote a whole blog post about that.
So everybody, I think we're coming up. We got another 5 minutes left. I did turn on the raise hand function. I'm not sure if everyone saw that. So I'd like to maybe take a couple questions from the audience. This is a big technical leap here. If people want to raise their hands, maybe I'll just take a minute, and anybody who wants to ask a question can raise their hand, and anybody who just pressed that button because it looked like a fun thing to press can unpress it.
Sure. And I'll jump in with continuing that line. I agree with everyone else, of course, but another issue that I think not many people take seriously is actually the Bitcoin time traveler dystopian scenario, which is, what if Bitcoin really does go mainstream? What if Plan B and his stock-to-flow ratio model turns out to be true, and the people who are currently in Bitcoin become this crazy wealthy elite, and there's a mass transfer of wealth, but the rest of the world ends up, falling into disrepair and having terrible economic consequences, and they start rounding up the Bitcoiners and persecuting them. What are you going to do then?
This
that
is
would
like
be
the
terrible
Bitcoin,
for adoption.
this is like the Mad Max version. You're thinking of
Pretty much.
All right. Well, I guess we know a little bit of insight into why you have your home security set up there. So, I guess audience raised hands. I'm gonna try this. So Kenneth. I'm gonna give you on air functionality here, and maybe you can come and ask your question. Kenneth, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
This is great. Yeah.
Oh, hi. First, just want to say thanks for putting this conference together. This is very fantastic. First time a VR user here. One thing I'm curious about was, I want to go back a little bit. One of you guys had mentioned something about a hard fork in some time from now. One thing I've really been curious about is what exactly, this is an open question for anyone, what exactly would a hard fork look like in terms of, who's going to be directing that? How is that going to be audited? How does that process actually occur with so much at stake? And yeah.
Well, I mean, it would have to go through the Bitcoin improvement proposal process, at least theoretically. No one can enforce anything, right? So these are all recommendations and guidelines. Generally, what you try to do is build consensus for whatever your proposed change is. And whether that's a hard fork or a soft fork does not necessarily change the recommendation for how to do the process. Hard fork, of course, you would want much stronger consensus. But, if that Bitcoin improvement proposal process got to the point where someone actually wrote code for it and could get it into the major implementations, and then it looked like we had general support from node operators and enterprises, this would be a fairly unprecedented thing to try to coordinate within Bitcoin. We have seen hard forks coordinated in other networks, so we have some decent guidelines to go by. So by no means is it impossible, but it's also not something that is perfectly quantifiable.
Well, I don't think we'll ever do a hard fork unless there's a imminent need for one. Right? It would just be so hard to pull off to get everyone to upgrade
within a certain amount of time for Bitcoin. So unless there's something like a quantum computing that breaks crypto, like private key encryption, or if someone finds a bug, an inflation bug that is causing problems that we have to fix, otherwise Bitcoin will just be broken.
What about extremely high on-chain fees?
Extremely high on-chain fees. Well, secondary
some people would say that's
I want
good.
to take another. I want to take another question here. I'm gonna do one more. I guess Sebastian. So I'm gonna put you on here. Can you hear us, Sebastian? Sebastian?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for taking my question. I'm just wondering to Charlie Lee about the Litecoin and Bitcoin relationship. Is there still this whole thing with the gold and silver idea that I heard you guys talk about before? Is that still actual, or how does that look today? That's my question.
Okay. I mean, the Litecoin is silver to Bitcoin's gold is kind of just like a marketing term, right? It's kind of a way where people kind of can easily understand how Litecoin fits in. But whatever Litecoin is to Bitcoin today is whatever people feel like it is, right? So it's not something that I dictate. This is what Litecoin is. Right? People use Litecoin today. Litecoin has faster confirmations and cheaper fees. They use it to move money around exchanges or for buying things. It's a useful currency, but it's pretty small compared to Bitcoin, right? The amount of value that gets transferred on the Litecoin network is an order, 2 orders of magnitude less than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is still the king, so to speak, of crypto.
And definitely
So Litecoin is whatever you want it to be.
Sorry. Yeah, we're going to leave a little bit of time between the next panel, so just want to do one more question. So the last one, so whoever is going to get this, just make sure it's really good. We're going to go with Mr. Jack Bauer from the 24 series here. Jack, can you hear us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Awesome. Hey, guys. Hey, appreciate you guys putting this on. This is awesome. When will banks, and not like central banks and governments, but I mean like your Wells Fargo and your Bank of America, when will they implement Bitcoin in custody? What's our prediction for year?
Well,
a while.
Yeah, I mean, the Litecoin Foundation actually partners with a bank in Germany that is looking into doing both fiat accounts and also crypto accounts at the same time. I think that'll be pretty cool when they do implement that, where users of that bank will actually have a crypto account managed by that bank. And
I would be worried, though, that the banks, at least in the beginning, they wouldn't be doing their own custody. They would outsource to some other custody provider, because I think one of the American Air Force Bank or something like integrated Coinbase or something. But, they're not doing
they would integrate.
I think they're going to buy Coinbase,
like
probably.
Bitco or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But
no, really, I think
cool
that many of the
it would be cool to see like a big bank do something like that in the near future. That would be cool to see.
I think a lot of big financial institutions are going to buy some of the major cryptocurrency companies if this thing keeps on, growing. That's the strategy for
And
them. Like we're going to see Wells Fargo buy Binance, something like that.
So, Fidelity built their own custody product. They'll probably start rolling that out to, more retail folks at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
Udi, do you want to come and transition us?
Who's next? Thank you for hosting. There we go. All right.
I'm just gonna stay here.
Are you on for the next panel?
No, I'm not. I de-amplified my voice. What's up, Dan? Thanks, Eric.
That's so weird. And now everyone unmutes and it's just like everyone walks around past each other. You can, but I put myself on mute.
And how'd you find it?
Oh, that's so cute.
Wide moon.
So is that what you look like? Huh? This one, huh?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, go up here, follow me. And then press the top button.
Hey, so
you see a blue.
we're going to continue in about
You see
5
the-
minutes.
If it's blue, that means you can get
But
there.
you should be able
Just
to
like
unmute yourself and just say whatever you want. Can you guys try to unmute yourselves and show me a sad emoji if you can't? Looks like a no. Okay, let's try something.
I think I'm unmuted.
How about now?
Hello, hello. Yo, what?
All right.
Hello. I hear you, dude. So, what's up, guys? Chilling? Just chilling, guys. Just chilling. Hello, everyone. Guys, enjoying this event?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, right? They actually asked me. I could ask a question. I wasn't prepared for that, dude. Didn't expect that.
Just ask when moon.
Yeah. Instead, I was like, "What's like Litecoin and Bitcoin gold relation?" Fucked up question, bro. I don't know, but it's good though. It's like good answer. I like Litecoin. It's pretty trippy. This. Do you have a VR on you or?
No, I'm PC.
Yeah, me too, man. Imagine having the VR. Pretty trippy.
People with VR headset have hands, and you have stretched hands on your body because you're on PC.
Oh, that's how you see the difference, yes?
Yep.
Cozy Bay. No, what's your name? Kataga Bay? Kataga? Cozy? Yes. You have a VR. You have a VR headset, right? You're moving your hands, dude.
Yeah. Actually, the sun is shining in. That's why the tracking is a little bit confusing. My hands are just flying around.
Yeah, I can see that. So, the sun is shining where you are. Here, there's no sun, bro. Here it's like cloudy,
Hey, Spencer.
dusk.
Hey,
What's up?
I think I'm ready.
Were you able to meet
Sweden.
any of the other guys?
Yeah, Travis was here just a second ago. Oh, he's right behind me.
Sweden, meine Freunde.
There it is.
Yeah, I think I only see you because we're not in the same instance. So,
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So who's with you?
I see Travis standing right next to me.
Kraken, isn't that like a German exchange or something?
Okay, Travis is good. Okay, so we're missing, I guess, Dan and Ari, right?
Is it Kraken?
Yeah, I don't see either of them yet.
Okay.
Kraken, the exchange Kraken, is that German?
Oh yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
Hey, Bit Paint, what's up, bro? Come here, hang with us. Here's the cool corner.
Yeah, I can.
We're gonna start probably in about 5 minutes, but yeah, you can come back. You can leave and come back whenever you want.
Yeah, I'm also Swede.
Also Swedish.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex. Team Sweden here, bro.
Yeah, man.
Bit Paint.
Dan says he's on stage.
I'm from Switzerland.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see him, but I just got a message from him.
Yeah.
Think about Switzerland when you say Sweden and vice versa.
Okay, let's see. I'll send him a message.
No, it's between France and Austria.
France and Australia.
Austria.
It's kangaroos in your backyard.
So to answer your question before, Kraken is US based at San Francisco.
What are you talking about now? San Francisco?
No, you ask where it's from, Kraken Exchange. It's from San Francisco. It's not German.
Really?
Fuck.
I'm pretty sure it's
European.
I thought it was
Yeah, it's not.
Germanish. Spencer, can you ask
Dan?
who was it next to you?
Travis is right over here.
Travis, right. So you can you ask Travis to turn on air?
Travis, can you turn on, go into host tools and do your amplify and you're on air? I don't know if you can hear Udi directly.
Well, actually, he might hear me.
I don't think he can hear you, but you can hear.
I can't hear him.
Oh, alright. Now it should be louder.
Can chat.
Is it actually possible to mute his audio sound?
Udi, can you hear Travis yet? Okay, Travis, when you see host tools and then amplify my voice, click go on air, and then go back over to the mic volume as well. So like 2 separate panels there.
You talking to me, Spencer?
That's you, Travis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in host tools, you can click amplify my voice and go on air.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, those are both checked. And then over on the main menu thing where you see emojis and everything up at the top on your mic volume.
Yeah.
Make sure that one's not muted. I know mine was muted before.
Got it. Yeah, that's unmuted. Okay.
Okay.
Should be.
It should be like green now, showing like an amplify sign on that.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Udi, can you hear Travis now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So do you guys see Dan in area?
I don't see Dan, no.
Okay. So
I don't see Ari either.
I'm gonna jump to
Okay, we'll wait here.
I think he was
Dan and Ari both.
629.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Who's that?
Yeah.
Oh, this is Jesse Powell. We're saying it.
What's up, Jesse?
Where are you, Jesse?
629.
I don't know what that means.
It's the room number, right? All right, just did it.
There's Dan.
There's Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Yep, there he is.
Heddle.
Wait. Who said Heddle?
Spencer.
What's up, guys? What's up, dude? We're just missing Ari then, huh?
Yeah.
I think he's going to turn his on air on and off. That's what made me visible. This is so cool. I see him. Am I supposed to feel nervous
There
right
he
now?
is, Ari. What's up?
Looking pretty good at that headset.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I know, it's been a quick minute.
Yeah, give me 1 second to get everything lined up here. All right, I'm ready to go. Oh, there's Ari. What's up, dude?
Hello. I don't know how to wave.
With your hand.
Oh,
no, he's on
gotcha.
the
Oh, I had some technical issues with the Rift, so I'm actually just on 2D at the moment, unfortunately.
Oh, got it. Oh, cool. All good. All right, Ari, I'm ready. Or Udi, I'm ready to go whenever you're ready. And what's my time? Okay. Okay, great. That sounds good to me. You guys.
After we're done with this panel, I'm gonna.
We'll put our hands in, do like a little break.
Hey.
Doing it spiritually.
What time is it? Game time.
Going back to high school football.
They need to make
After we're done.
Some VR helmets to mimic the brain damage of a football game. You get tackled, it just hammered to the back of the head.
Lovely.
After the end of this panel, I'm gonna go stage diving into this. Run up and
Cool.
Dan, are we about to get this started or what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Udi. And welcome, everyone. I think this is going to be an exciting panel. We're going to cover the topic I'm sure everyone's thinking about, especially after last night, which is what happens to the price of Bitcoin around the halving. So we're going to dive in with these three experts on all the different nuances and all the different thought processes behind how we can evaluate price performance. And, to kick this off, guys, so what can we expect the price to do around the halving? And, Ari, do you want to go ahead and take this one first?
Sure. So I don't have and haven't had a very strong opinion. We spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. And the way I tend to think about these things is really dividing markets into sets of participants. So how are the short-term traders positioned and what are they betting on? How are the miners positioned and what do they think is going to happen? What will the institutional investors do? What will Asian retail versus Western retail do? So heading into this period, the part that's most opaque to me is the Chinese miners. I just have the fewest, close relationships among that group. And most were neutral to bearish over the last couple months, both heading into the halving and coming out. They were, it wasn't so much that they expected any major capitulation. Some of them noted that unlike in 2018, you don't have that many miners with massive stockpiles of coins to sell. And on the other side, we had kind of this organic strong hand buying in the U.S., Western Hemisphere. So starting from end of March when Bitcoin fell to 3,500, there was a lot of buying by macro funds, high net worth individuals, some of the early kind of Wall Street investors, people like Pete Brigger of Fortress, were buying more Bitcoin. So with all that said, the contingent that's probably going to drive things over the next few weeks are the short-term traders. there's a little bit of a narrative of buy the rumor, sell the news, of kind of buy into the halving and then sell. But I actually don't think that group is that powerful at the moment. We're seeing meaningful inflows from other. So when no one else is trading, when you don't have retail in the market, when you don't have institutional, it's kind of the short-term crypto native traders who drive the price. But when big institutional money's coming in, those guys tend to get caught off sides. They try to short sell resistance, it gets blown out, they end up buying back, then they try to sell again, they end up buying back. So with all that said, I have no opinion over the next week or 2 weeks, but I do think we're in a strong bull market that's being driven by things having nothing to do with the halving, that's being driven by just kind of fundamental organic buying among institutionals and high net worth individuals.
Spencer, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, so for us at Blockchain Capital, our time horizon's typically measured in years and not weeks. So, for us, it's kind of all bets are off of what will happen over the next couple of weeks. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised to see a kind of sell the news type of event here. This is a very well telegraphed event. It's not a surprise to the market. It's, in fact, probably the least surprising thing that could possibly happen. And I think that there are, while we've seen a material uptick in institutional participation, there's still heavy retail participation. I think that people, some segments can get over convinced that, in the 48 hours or 2 weeks right around the halving that, you see some kind of magical price action. So my view tends to be more that, listen, I think in the very short time horizon right around the halving, I think the price is just as likely to go up as it is to go down. But I am very constructive, much like Ari said, I think that we are fundamentally entering a very constructive bull market here. And I do think the halving plays some role in that. It's just not any kind of magical formulaic increase in price here. It's more just driven by the fact that, listen, we're already seeing this uptick in the media cycle in terms of attention, people talking about Bitcoin. And the important second part of that is really that, Bitcoin is probably the most reflexive asset in the world, meaning that when price increases, the fundamentals of Bitcoin actually improve. Not just in terms of hash rate or in terms of transaction volume, but also in terms of, companies invest in on-ramps infrastructure to support Bitcoin. They tend to do that and be more inclined when price is rising, but they don't hold that infrastructure when price falls. So I think that we're starting to see that tailwind now in the next cycle. I think there were a lot of companies that after 2017 buckled down and started building some sort of a crypto product or moving that direction. These are large companies. It takes them a very long time to move towards it. And I think that we're now about to see a substantial tailwind from all of this kind of coming together at the same time.
And Travis, kind of wrap this up. What do you feel? What do you think is going to happen over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah. I think if Black Thursday had never happened, then we would have been going into this with a completely different kind of setup around the situation. So it's kind of like you need to think of this halving specifically in the context of, the kind of nuclear sized decimation that occurred on Black Thursday. And from what we can tell coming off of Black Thursday, the buying and the bounce was primarily led by U.S. retail, and we think kind of U.S. quote unquote the herd, so the more kind of institutional U.S. type of buyers, and we kind of divide the way we've been thinking about it at Ikigai is we kind of divide why they bought into three different buckets. So they bought because Bitcoin was half off. They bought because the halving, and they bought because money printer go burr. And then, very subjectively and kind of qualitatively, you try and assign what percent of the reason they bought to each of those three factors. And then you fast forward from the middle part of March to today, and or let's say a couple days from now, and you've now given them, nearly a double off the low, depending on kind of where they bought. They're up a lot, right? If they bought late March, first part of April, you made great returns in a short amount of time. And then the halving is, your major catalyst is now in the rearview mirror. But money printers still go burr, and it looks like it's going to continue to go burr. And so it's kind of thinking through like what percent of the reason why the herd and U.S. retail bought the Black Thursday dip was because of those first two factors, which are sort of now somewhat in the past, versus the third factor, which is very much ongoing. So that's kind of one framework we've been thinking about it. And then I think, in my opinion, our view or my view has changed on what the post-halving kind of dip was going to look like just in the last couple weeks with Renaissance Technology and then Andreessen's second fund, and now the Paul Tudor Jones news that just came out on Friday. And it really looks like going back to those first three factors, it would make sense that if you gave an institutional investor a double or close to a double off the low, and then their major catalyst is now in the rearview mirror, they may take some off there, kind of take some off the table there. But if they only had a third of a position or half of a position on to start with, then there may be, plenty of reason to believe that there may be some sort of dry powder in the tank to kind of buy the dip. So then you have the halving situation, lots of conversations around this whole minor capitulation theory. I think there's different people on different sides of the table on what that situation looks like. I think there's the general story goes something along the lines of, starting tomorrow night, the amount of revenue received from block rewards gets cut in half, all else being equal, and marginally profitable miners then become unprofitable, and they go out of business. And as they go out of business, then they sell the BTC that's on their balance sheet. That has downward price pressure, and then you also have the very profitable, most profitable miners that are incentivized to push price down, to push those unprofitable miners out of business, and to be able to take market share from miners. And there's some of that situation going on. And then, as we all know, in crypto has a tendency to take a narrative that's like 20% true and make it 100% true, regardless of like how true it may or may not be. This minor capitulation thing seems like something that is being talked about enough that it could be a narrative that gets traction, even though there's questions around the legitimacy of like what's actually going on there, because it's kind of opaque. It's kind of hard to tell. But so I guess it was before Renaissance Technologies, before A16Z, before Paul Tudor Jones. It was our base case that you were going to see some downward price pressure sometime in the back part of May or the month of June. And just think of that as risky whales that do have control over Bitcoin's price, at least for instances or moments in time, putting downward pressure on price to go see where people really want to own this thing when the next halving is 3 years and 11 months away. And my view is that I think that the amount of dry powder that is going to be available and willing to buy that dip on spot is going to be allow that kind of post-halving dip to probably be more shallow and shorter than I think I would have originally anticipated, just a couple weeks ago.
Thanks for that, Travis. And, kind of along that same vein of thought, you brought up Renaissance and Tudor Jones. I'll go ahead and give you the first opportunity to reply to this, but, what's the impact of Bitcoin related announcements by these traditional finance folks like Paul Tudor Jones and Renaissance? This seems to be a really big deal. How do you interpret it?
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of differentiate. Paul Tudor Jones and Renaissance Technologies are very different types of investors. Renaissance Technologies is the most successful hedge fund of all time by a country mile. Their returns are public. They're absolutely staggering. but they invest in, they're, something akin to the godfather of sort of quantitative investing, and do it at a level that just, is the envy of every other quant fund pretty much that's ever existed. It's really hard to say the manner in which they have an investment in Bitcoin in terms of, so if you know kind of how risk parity models work, or if you know how like a multi-factor kind of risk model works, then maybe simplistic, and this is something that we've done in some of the other crypto traders that I talk to, or we've kind of talked about this internally. It's a very fascinating thought exercise to think about, like, how is Renaissance technology sort of like assigning factors to Bitcoin and its relationship to other assets or financial instruments that they trade. And there's really kind of I think there's probably no real way to know. It's really just like literally a thought experiment. But they go about evaluating investments in a very different way than Paul Tudor Jones. It's a very quantitative way. It's something akin to, you look at thousands of financial instruments across the entire world, and then each financial instrument is actually, it's not really a big slice of beta with some alpha or idiosyncratic risk on top. It's actually like 1,000 tiny slices of beta, and one financial instrument is sort of like the summation of many different tiny slices of individual risk factors. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you can Google something called Barra Beta, BARRA, which is like a multi-factor risk model that we used when I was at Point72, and other multi-manager shops use it as well too. And it's a kind of simplistic way to think about maybe how Renaissance Technologies is investing in this. Put Renaissance, the way Renaissance gets exposure to this, off to the side. Again, it's very bullish. Like they didn't go through the hassle of being able to trade Bitcoin futures on the CME to short this thing into a hole in the ground. And they didn't do it to like make a market to try and make $2 on the bid and offer, because it's too much of a headache, and they're too big to make enough money on, I think, making a market, at least right now. So it's probably not market making as well either. So I think that's kind of some things to think about our Renaissance. Andreessen Horowitz, $515 million fund. It was oversubscribed. People knocking down their door trying to give them money. They can hold, I think the documents say you can hold up to 20% of an investment outside of kind of venture equity capital, and then in the blog post, they specifically mention, I think they call it emerging stores of value, which is, pretty obviously just they're going to buy and hold Bitcoin. And if you kind of run through the math of the different size investments they make in different portfolio companies, there's actually a very real chance that Bitcoin may be their single largest position in that $515 million fund, which is like, pretty awesome. And also really great if you can get paid 2 and 20 to passively hold Bitcoin. That's a great job. And then you got Paul Tudor Jones, who's much more of this macro investor. He's been around for a long time. He shorted the market in 1987, which is like kind of his first initial claim to fame. He runs in all of the global macro type of investor circles. And he thinks about things much more in a big picture kind of way. And if you read his blog post, then like you're just like Jim Simons is the guy that founded Renaissance Technologies. Like, you're just not going to get a blog post out of Jim Simons about like how he's framing his Bitcoin investment at all. And whereas like you can read about how Paul Tudor Jones is kind of thinking about it, and he's thinking about it in a lot of the reasons that I think everybody, in this room right now likes Bitcoin. And it is this kind of insurance policy against monetary and fiscal policy irresponsibility from central banks and governments globally. And, I don't want to be presumptuous about the type of hold time or investment strategy he's doing, but I don't think it's like a like a 2-month punt for him, and he's gonna, even if he makes, I think, really good returns, I think he's planning on holding it longer than that.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, that was super interesting. And Spencer, do you want to give us a VC flair on that? Kind of like dig in a little bit more on the VC side of things?
I mean, look, it's constructive across the board. So, I mean, we follow asset prices pretty closely, not as probably as closely as Ari or Travis here, because we're actually not trading at all. But it does reflect into the underlying markets, right? So, like, all of these things are really constructive for price. We've seen how that price action translates into fundamentals for, bellwether companies in the industry like Kraken. And it's very substantial. So, for us, like, the direction of the market here is important. And again, mostly thinking about, what does crypto look like 2, 3, 5, 8 years from now?
Nice. And Ari, do you have any final thoughts there on how these, bigger traditional financial folks coming in, how important that is, or what you're interpreting that as meaning?
Yeah, just one thing to add. Something that frankly surprised me a little bit. The Paul Tudor Jones news. Initially, I didn't take it as super important, but we heard immediately from a lot of OTC desks that they suddenly got a lot of calls and some onboarding follow-through by other macro funds. So I forget who it was, but someone posted on Twitter that what Paul Tudor Jones just did was remove the career risk for other macro fund managers to be long Bitcoin. I'm not sure who I need to credit for that, but that wasn't my line. I think it's totally accurate. There were a lot of macro fund managers that had done some analysis on Bitcoin, were thinking about it, and now the career risk is gone. Now they know, it's actually beyond that. They know that if Bitcoin performs incredibly well over the next year, they're going to get asked by their LPs why they didn't own it. Right? Suddenly the risk turns from fear of looking stupid to fear of missing out, including fear of looking stupid to your LPs for missing a big rally. So the Paul Tudor Jones news was meaningful. It's elite. It's and some of that follow-on won't appear in price for another week, 2, 4, because these other funds will have to go through the onboarding process, and in some cases board approval, sometimes a regulatory filing to be allowed to trade it. So that's going to be a gradual effect probably over the next month or 2.
Couldn't agree more on that, Ari. That's such a key point. This about the reputational risk. I mean, it's just. Even people that were quite constructive before, it was the risk reward wasn't totally there in terms of, if something goes wrong, and obviously Bitcoin's a volatile asset, could easily add a material downdraft of fund performance, you might actually lose your job. And in this situation, like once you have Fidelity on the supply side, you have Rentec, and you have Paul Tudor Jones, people of this caliber, it is very much reputationally de-risked, and that's such a huge tailwind.
Yeah, that career risk thing, like, you cannot, and I think for those of us that spend a whole lot of time talking to, different layers of investors or potential investors in this asset class, and Dan, I know you've probably spent a lot of time, Ari, all of us on this stage have spent a lot of time. You run into that career risk situation so often, and it just. I think maybe if you polled the people in this room right now, before last week, had you ever heard of Paul Tudor Jones? I think actually a reasonably high percent of people would say no. But then if you polled like Wall Street and you said, is Paul Tudor Jones known as being a very smart global macro investor? True or false? Like that true number would just be very high within the kind of sort of like maybe like whatever higher ends of finance type of circles. And that just trickles down into family offices, that trickles down into investment committees at various different asset management firms. You've got other global macro investors that are, we're waiting for that green light that can now get that green light, or like, everybody on this stage I know runs into this a lot. When you're talking to some institutional investor and they have an investment committee, and you've got the junior guy that's on the team, and he's the big Bitcoin champion, and the junior guy is trying to get the senior guy on board so that he'll champion it, and then the two of them can wage this like guerrilla warfare through the organization to try and get the organization exposure to Bitcoin. I've seen this a lot of different times in organizations, and I think that the Paul Tudor Jones type of news gives that junior guy the ammunition he needs to get the senior guy on board so that then they can go and get that green light from investment committee members. I know that's kind of nuanced, but like that really is how I see it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see how, Bitcoin is such a new, crazy type of technology that they really need this validation by someone really publicly known and publicly respected. So I think the news in my network was people really, really were excited about this. This is a big event. Switch gears a little bit. So there's something that I think a common question that pops up around price action with the halving is the halving priced in? And I'll go ahead and throw this one to you all three, and you guys can choose who goes first.
Or happy to jump in here.
Sure.
Go
I'll
ahead.
start. So this could be an almost endless discussion, probably, for those of us up on stage, because it ties into like really basic questions about economics and markets, like the efficient market hypothesis. So without getting into any of the kind of academic weeds, I'll try to keep this really brief. The way I think about it is, with any early stage project, as it matures, you get different types of market participants. So, for example, is it, when a VC earns a 50x on an early stage investment, is that evidence of an inefficiency? How do we think about that? Is it that future growth wasn't priced in? I think part of it, and this is what partly first drew me to Bitcoin as an investor, there's a very different mental framework. So the question of is something priced in really refers to everyone in the world is already looking at a publicly listed asset. Everyone's already thinking about it and analyzing it, and everyone is trying to price it correctly today. That's not how assets work. That's not how Bitcoin's worked, right? It's not like every investor in the world was pricing Bitcoin in 2010. Most investors hadn't heard of it. Most investors weren't thinking about it. So part of what's been happening as we've gone through time is, as Bitcoin becomes more mature, more accessible, as it becomes operationally easier to trade it, to store it, to custody it, to if you're a regulated entity, to do AML KYC, to do tax reporting, it opens up Bitcoin to a whole new set of investors. And that's, just as we were talking about, Paul Tudor Jones would not have invested even personally in Bitcoin in 2010 because he wouldn't have known how. And in 2017, he was personally invested, but his fund wasn't in because there were too many operational hurdles. So that's kind of my mental model for are things priced in when we're talking about really long periods of time. So I think the primary effect of the halving, I don't think it has that big of a direct price impact. It's more that it's central to the narrative of what Bitcoin is, right? So Bitcoin as hard money is all about having 21 million coins over time. And you can't really separate that fact from the halving as how we get there, right? Like, what is the halving? It's how we get to fixed supply over time and how we have a predictable inflation curve. So I think its main impact is there's really two, neither of which are really the reduction in inflation. The main impacts are, one, there's a market narrative that spurs some interest among retail, among institutional. There's just a story that causes people to learn about it, right? People hear about the halving. Well, what the hell is that? What does that mean? And in doing so, they learn about Bitcoin as hard money. They learn about, the programmatic consensus that gives us a predictable inflation rate. And then the other is the kind of second-order minor effect. And that's really hard to tease out. I've spent a lot of time on that, and my conclusion was, like, for this halving, it's really unclear what the impact of that will be. So I guess to be as concise as I can, I do think the halving is priced in the very short term, meaning short-term traders don't buy because the halving happened, right? Certainly they try to price it in ahead of time. The way I trade it is, if it feels to me like everyone in crypto is levered long Bitcoin to bet on the halving, I probably want to fade that. And I'm probably looking for the time to fade it, because all those people at some point are going to reverse their leverage and get back to their core position. If, on the other hand, no one's talking about the halving or everyone's given up on it, that's probably a buy, because you will probably have some people at the margin buying because of a supply reduction. So I think there's some kind of long-term bullishness. It's very similar. It's a pity that I can't kind of gesture with my hands and draw a chart. But when people like Warren Buffett talk about the market, they'll say, okay, you've got some long-term, fairly stable diagonal line upward and to the right, and that's the economy growing and companies accruing value over time. And then you've got a wild market. that sometimes is overhyped and overexuberant and sometimes is too pessimistic and too depressed. And that the market is way more volatile than the fundamentals of companies. The fundamentals, I forget the number, there's been some academic work that suggests that something like 30% of the volatility of the market is really fundamental. And the other 70% is just from market microstructure, from speculation, from margin calls, all that kind of thing. So long-term, Bitcoin halving contributes to this fundamental long-term growth. Short-term, sometimes traders overprice it, sometimes they underprice it. So as we head into this halving, that's also how I'm trading it, which is to say, if we were at 14,000 right now, I'd probably be selling aggressively, thinking that was over-exuberance around the halving. If we plummet to 6K tomorrow, I'll definitely be buying, not just long-term, but also short-term, thinking that's some people who were probably over-levered to the halving getting liquidated. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'll double back to my same kind of comments from before, which is, I think it's priced in the truest sense that there's no risk-free reward to be had by buying Bitcoin before the halving and selling it shortly afterwards. That said, I do expect, I am very constructive on price for the 18 to 24 months afterward. And having is one component to that. It's not the main reason, but that increased kind of attention and people realizing of, wow, that thing is still alive. And it's still, not only is it still alive, but it's actually doing better than ever. That drives, a whole nother round of media attention. It drives a whole nother round of, hey, you know what? I dismissed this 3 years ago. Maybe I need to take another look. I mean, I know for most of us, even that own Bitcoin, most of us dismissed it originally. I know I did, at least in the beginning. And then it was after, watching it continue to survive, that I began to get a little bit more constructive. And so I think we're seeing that across the general population now. And so I think the next 18 to 24 months will be a great time for the industry.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that quickly is to touch on Ari's point. Our space was very levered long going into Black Thursday. And that was on kind of expecting some halving, a run up into the halving. Black Thursday was a nuclear event. It wiped a tremendous amount of leverage, violently so, unfortunately. And currently there is so much less long levered positions in this market than there were, in late Feb. And that just makes the setup around this halving much, much more healthy. And to be honest with you, the dump that we just had overnight, like longs were not offsides last night. And now they're like really, really not offsides. And that just makes for the kind of setup right here around the halving, just kind of a much more healthy type of situation. So that's all I'll say.
Thanks, Travis. And, we don't have too much time left, so I'll kind of wrap it up with the last question. We've covered short to medium-term price action and looked a little bit farther out, but what's your outlook at the end of 2020? What if you want to venture there, what price do we see in December 2020? And Travis, we'll go ahead and start with you with this one.
I hate
price, but
yeah. I try hard not to make predictions like this. The bounce that we've had, look, a chart that I pay a lot of attention to, like look at Bitcoin overlaid with the S&P 500, overlaid with gold, overlaid with the inverse VIX since the end of February to current. And then the other really fun thing that you can do, maybe I'll tweet this chart afterwards. The other really fun thing that you can do is just overlay weekly asset purchases by the Fed on top of that. And it's real apparent now that this trade that we've had over the back part of through the peak volatility through March and then this big bounce since then. It looks like it's all kind of one trade, and you actually hilariously can probably summarize that trade into money print or go burr, and it has allowed risk assets to disconnect themselves from the health of the underlying economy in the United States to a degree that we have never seen before. Never seen it before, that level of disconnect. And you can hate that or you can love that, but that's just what we're looking at right now. And it looks pretty apparent to me that the Fed and the Treasury and the Trump administration, they're just going to keep doing all the things. They're going to do all the things. And they have the political willpower to do that. Just in the last 75 days, we have crossed the Rubicon in the United States in terms of ceasing to ask the question, how do we pay for all of this? Just 75 days ago, people still ask that question in the context of monetary and fiscal policy stimulus. Just in a short amount of time, people have stopped asking that question. And that allows for things to happen from a monetary and fiscal policy stimulus perspective that were previously unthinkable just a really short amount of time ago. And it opens the door for, we're doing this MMT light thing right now. We're doing UBI light right now. And it just looks like if you look at the Fed and the Treasury and the Trump administrations, they're willing and able and incentivized to print with a track record of printing, and their only real kind of enemy to this is kind of headline CPI inflation in US dollar terms, which is just not on the table in the near term. So I think they just keep printing and keep printing. And I think that's just a really tremendously positive backdrop for Bitcoin to kind of head higher. And you literally could not write a better backdrop for a non-sovereign form of money to start to gain mass adoption.
Thanks for that, Travis. And Spencer, what are your thoughts on the new price action and where is Bitcoin going to be at the end of 2020?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of Travis's comments here. I mean, literally, when we look at macro and micro, you can't ask for a better backdrop. Maybe we tried to sit around the other day and come up with, okay, what are some of the real headwinds that we could really see and try and balance these out against a lot of the positive tailwinds we're seeing. Minor capitulation is one of the only kind of stories that really comes up from the negative side. And it's a long list of things on whether it's the micro side in terms of the industry companies, bellwethers in the space like Kraken, or whether it's talking to, traditional financial institutions that are, very serious in their products targeted towards the space, or it's the global macro landscape right now. There are so many different levels to be constructive on. It really, almost no matter which angle you're coming at, you're going to arrive at a pretty interesting story here. The other fascinating thing has just been, I always like to test this at least anecdotally against kind of just communications around people outside of the crypto industry. And it's been shocking to me how many people have reached out over the past few weeks, people that don't really watch markets, that don't really follow politics, and have said things like, I honestly don't understand what's happening, but I feel like I need to buy gold and Bitcoin. And these are people who don't own gold. They're not gold bugs. They're not Bitcoin people. And so that's just been shocking to me. And an increasing number of people telling me, which is a great insight into how they think about it, have told me things along the lines of, hey, listen, I have 3 young children. I want to buy Bitcoin for my children. I'm not even thinking about it for my portfolio. This is de-risking their future, which has just been a shocking thing. That these are the types of people that would have never said this to me in 2016, 2017. So overall, I just, I couldn't ask for a better backdrop, and there's so many different levels to be constructive on here.
Ari, do you want to kind of bring this to a close?
Sure, yeah, I'll keep this brief. I agree with everything that's been said. I'm not entirely convinced that near term we're out of the deflationary woods. I just don't know. So if Bitcoin is lower than here at the end of the year, I think it's almost certainly because equities are way down. If equities are down 30% from here, that's kind of like the scenario where I'd be a little worried about Bitcoin's performance through year end. With that said, I think that would just be similar to Black Thursday. I think that would just be a temporary setback, right? Equities collapsed, Bitcoin collapsed with them. Bitcoin was then right back, within a month. So I don't view that as an existential concern, but like a mental model, and don't pay any attention to like the betas or the numbers, but just super roughly, I think Bitcoin over the next year and 2 years and probably even 3 years, it's kind of going to be the return on equities plus the return on gold plus some idiosyncratic alpha, maybe another 30% a year, let's say. So if equities and gold are flat this year, I think Bitcoin's up a bit from here. It's very plausible that, like my base case though, is that equities are relatively flat over the next 5 years and gold and Bitcoin skyrocket for all the reasons Travis gave. So I do think that the question I get probably the most from potential investors in Bitcoin is, or especially from the traditional and macro crowd, is basically, well, what if we have continued deflation? And my answer is, well, in a deflationary crisis, everything tends to fall. Bitcoin too, as we saw on Black Thursday. That's not a surprise. But Bitcoin also is in a secular uptrend. It's also in this kind of sustained bull market. So yeah, on the day when equities collapse or the month they collapse, Bitcoin probably goes with it. But as we saw, Bitcoin then recovered much more strongly than equities. So with all that said, my base case is probably something like Bitcoin at 20K end of this year, and then 50 to 100K within 18 months after that, with a lot of risk though. Plenty of uncertainty.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. That was super informative, and I think we've got a little bit of time to take one or two questions. We actually have 20 questions, so I'm not sure how to evaluate.
Let's do all of them.
Let's do all of them, right? Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and go with Nicholas, and I think I'd just let this person go on air. All right, so Nicholas, you're on air right now. Would you like to ask a question?
No. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Okay, that's okay. All right, let me try another one. Let's see, maybe one of the newer ones. Okay, Sebastian. All right, Sebastian, I've just put you on air.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Do you have something to ask?
Thanks for taking my question. It was really interesting listening to all of you guys explaining your view of the long-term price on the Bitcoin. Are you guys concerned about the change in the use of Bitcoin? As previously it was talked a lot about using it for buying things, like as an actual currency, and now it's a little bit more about like this value of storage and stuff like that. Do you see any concerns connected to that discussion?
I always like to say Bitcoin's too good at being a store of value right now to be a good method of exchange right now. And the world has too many other methods of exchange that work pretty well for Bitcoin to be super worried in the near term about delivering on that use case.
Let's be real here. Bitcoin's hypervolatile in ways that we all like for the most part. That doesn't make for a great medium of exchange. Like, people generally don't want to accept as payment something that is extremely volatile. That narrative to me, frankly, never made sense for crypto, especially now that we have stable coins where you can get censorship resistance, privacy, anonymity, kind of whatever you want from Bitcoin with a much more stable price. That's not a long-term problem for Bitcoin because part of the pitch for Bitcoin is depreciation resistance, right? That part of the reason we like Bitcoin is that it isn't tethered to fiat, right? It won't devalue over time the way fiat will. But short term, people are pretty darn happy with the dollar. They're pretty darn happy with currencies that are fairly stable. And frankly, it never made sense to me, the idea that Bitcoin would conquer the world as a medium of exchange early on. The path for new money has traditionally been pretty consistently store of value, then medium of exchange, then unit of account. And each of those phases may take well over a decade. So I don't view it as a problem. Store of value continuing to grow will, over time, lead to less volatility, more stability, more confidence, more robust operational networks, just things like Bitcoin ATMs and BitPay will continue to evolve and competitors to it. So I don't view it as a concern at all.
All right. Well, that was a really, really informative and great answer to my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And I'm going to keep taking questions until Uden kicks me off the stage. So let's see. Hopefully these individuals, let's see, a Timon, I'm going to put you on air, and if you don't have a question, that's okay, but let's see if you do. All right, Timon, I've put you on air.
Sorry, I didn't have a question.
Okay, cool. And let's see, how about Edwin? I'm going to put you on air. Edwin, do you have a question for us?
with. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't have a question.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up then, because I can only go off the audience raising hands as questions. So, all right, guys, really appreciate you all getting signed up for this. By the way, these speakers had to go through training and get to understand these devices. So this is a pretty new experience for everyone, and thanks for everyone for coming out. Hope you had a great time. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
That's so awesome.
Awesome.
Oh snap, we could talk. What's up, everybody? Yeah, what up, my guy Alejandro?
Hey, this is the best presentation so far. Like, wow, great.
Yeah, it's been clean, man. I'm live streaming, by the way. My stream can't hear me, but they can hear you. And for everybody else that can hear me,
Is Luis from Ethereum somewhere here? I don't know how to how to find people yet.
all good, buddy.
Oh, okay, we're good now. Yeah, nowhere to find somewhere. You just gotta hover over their native avatars. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo thing.
Pretty much.
But yeah, no, I was just sharing the information to the trading group that I'm in. They're mostly into equities, and we trade every day. So I was dubbed the crypto king of the